My friends, the news agency of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard published a request today, and this request has a specific target. They asked Iran to strike the port of Haifa here in Israel, and along with Haifa, the second port, which is in Dubai. So pay attention to this choice because it's the key to everything. This time, it wasn't a military base, the target wasn't a reactor, and it wasn't an airport. They were two commercial ports. And when you understand why they chose exactly these two places, you'll understand the whole war because this isn't just about uranium. And before that, the United States had sent a very tough message to the regime, and President Trump published a message talking about 1,000 missiles aimed at Iran. He ended his message in a way that, from an American president, changes its meaning. Today, I'll show you a map that explains this, and by the end, you'll understand. The target chosen by Iran is not a sign of strength, it's a sign of desperation. And it reveals that, along with the regime, there's a much bigger giant losing this war. A giant that no one is mentioning. It's being left out. And I saved the worst part of this video for the end so you can understand everything all at once. Because there is a place in Iran dug deep inside a mountain where no inspector in the world has ever set foot. No one knows what's inside, and experts fear it was dug so deep that not even American bunker buster bombs can reach it. New satellite images have just shown movement at the entrance of this place. I'll tell you about it here at the end of the video. And when I tell you, you'll understand why this whole negotiation isn't worth the paper it's written on, reporting directly from Israel, right where everything is happening. Stay with me until the end of this video, folks. Local time, 12:44 on July 11th. Okay, folks. But before I get into the facts here, one quick reminder for you too. For those who just read the headline and think they get it, do you believe this is just another conflict over a strait or a bomb? It's not. It's a dispute over who will control the routes of global trade for the coming decades. And I'm going to give you the whole map here, piece by piece, so that the conclusion at the end is yours. Okay? It's yours. If you're not subscribed to the channel yet, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And let's start here with the American pressure because that's what triggered Iran's response. According to the journalist's report, for those who still remember him, the Israeli Barak Ravid, who lives in the United States and has a newspaper called Axios. 3 American officials spoke with journalists on Friday, and the United States' demand is very specific. It's not just about stopping shooting at ships in the Strait of Hormuz, it's about making a public statement. Listen to the words of the American official who spoke with these journalists. Quote, What we're demanding is that the Iranians make a public statement acknowledging that all channels of the Strait of Hormuz, all those passages, this one up here, this one, and the one below, are open and that they are no longer shooting at ships. Pay close attention here, folks. This part remains closed, okay? The Oman route remains closed. The ships escorting the oil tankers are no longer passing through here. The route up here, on the Iranian side, is still operating. In other words, the American and Oman routes are, at this very moment, still closed. They are officially closed. So pay attention to that word from these Americans because that's the heart of this demand. Because the Americans don't just want the result, the practical outcome, they want the humiliation. They want the regime that spent weeks telling the world that the Strait is Iranian forever to have to open its mouth and admit in front of everyone that that water isn't theirs. In other words, folks, that's not going to happen, right? Does anyone really believe that's actually going to happen? This is about forcing the enemy to kneel in public. It's not going to happen. And here I also need to tell you something because a lot of sources out there are exaggerating this story, okay? There are channels saying that a 24-hour deadline was given and that after that the war automatically resumes and that this 24-hour deadline ends tonight. What the original report says is something else. She talks about serious consequences. And an American official said the following phrase, if they don't take this position, it won't be a good day for them. A word to the wise is enough. Go ahead. A few words are enough, but there's no 24-hour deadline there. It won't be a good day. That's what they said. This here is the real threat, and it's already enough. I won't sell you an unconfirmed headline. Here, you get what was actually said, not just what sounds better. And there was another American phrase, this one almost poetic, about the atomic program. They said, if we can't get the powder, it's not the powder you're thinking of, folks. They said, if we can't get the powder, we don't have any agreements with Iran. The powder, my friends, is enriched uranium. It's the material for the bomb. And just look at the numbers because they explain everyone's rush about this. According to the report from the Nuclear Agency, the International Atomic Energy Agency, Iran had more than 440 kilos of uranium enriched to 60% and about 42 or 44 kilos. If they are enriched all the way, it would already be enough for at least one bomb. All right? That's what's being discussed. So, do the math and you'll understand why no one is going to sleep well until this is resolved. And it was in this atmosphere that President Trump posted the message, his strongest message so far. Take a look at the text, folks. Quote, 1,000 missiles are loaded and ready, aimed at the Islamic Republic of Iran, and thousands more will follow soon if the Iranian government carries out the threat it made against the life of the current president of the United States, which in this case is me. End quote. And he confirmed by saying that the orders have already been given, that the American army is ready, willing, and able for a period of a year, with the possibility of extension, to completely devastate all areas of Iran. Okay? This story is still going on. Remember the plane that was changed? So, it's still going on. That's it. He released this early this morning, guys. Trump posted this message. And then there was another detail that almost no one mentioned. He ended this message with a phrase in Arabic called "Praise be to Allah." He said that, guys. Written by the President of the United States right below a threat of 1,000 missiles. This isn't the first time he's used this expression in messages about Iran. But now, what is he doing? Writing this again, right, guys? This is a message directed at the Islamic world. It's like he's saying, I'm not fighting your faith, I'm fighting this regime. He separates the people from the regime, using, the language of the people themselves. And the timing of this post says it all. It came right after the funeral of the supreme leader, when crowds in the streets of Iran were holding up banners calling for Trump's head. The crowds, 10 million, 9 million people in a country of 90 million, and some people say they're the majority. Same thing with the protests in Israel, right? 500,000 people gather in Tel Aviv and claim they're the majority. So, at the funeral, right, at the burial, they shouted in the street, and Trump responded with 1,000 missiles and praise be to Allah. But I have to give you the other side too, because on this channel, you don't just hear what's comfortable. Legally, this story about orders already given is very weak. The American president can't leave an order in effect for after his own death. The power immediately passes to the successor. And the successor, depending on who he is, can cancel everything, okay? I believe that if something happens to him and it's proven that it was Iran, we will have a war. I'm absolutely sure, I think, right? I believe so, right? I believe it will really happen if something happens to the president, but the successor, in this case Vance, can indeed cancel everything. So this is real, right, guys? This is a political message. Trump is telling the regime just one thing: my life has a price you can't pay. If up to this point, this video has already helped you understand what the headline doesn't explain, leave a like, because I'm not done yet. I'm still not done. There's a lot of important stuff coming. It only takes 2 seconds to hit that like button, and it helps this content reach more people who don't know anything about the Middle East. And now we're getting to the heart of this video, because Iran has responded. They didn't respond with missiles, they responded with a target. The Fars news agency, which is actually the spokesperson connected to the Revolutionary Guard, published a direct request. Iran should strike. A request to Iran, Fars asked Iran. Iran should strike the port of Jebel Ali in Dubai and the port of Haifa here in Israel. And they gave a name to what's happening. They called it the War of the Corridors. Remember that name because it's the most honest definition the enemy themselves have ever given about this conflict. And now pay close attention, because here is the piece that almost no one is explaining. Why Haifa? Why Dubai? Everyone is asking. There's a project many people know about, but I'll remind you in case you forgot. And for those unfamiliar, you'll learn now. There's a project called the India Middle East Europe Corridor. It was announced at a G20 summit in New Delhi in September 2023. And here's how it works. It's a trade route that starts in India, goes through the United Arab Emirates, crosses Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and reaches Israel at the port of Haifa. And from Haifa, it goes straight to Europe. 8 countries signed this memorandum, 8 countries, including the United States, the European Union, India, and Saudi Arabia. Okay? And the United Arab Emirates as well. So what's the advantage of all this, right? According to India's own Minister of Commerce, this route cuts logistics costs by up to 30% and transportation time by up to 40% compared to the traditional route through the Suez Canal. So the main one hurt by all this, besides Iran, of course, and China, is Egypt itself, right? So you'll probably see Egypt making moves as well, and that's why Egypt stays silent for now and places troops in the Sinai Desert, because it will be the most harmed if this route really starts to operate. Let's piece this together slowly. This route started with the Abraham Accords, right? Since then, it's the child, we could say. It's the economic child of peace between Israel and the Arab world. And it does two things that the Iranian regime cannot accept. The first thing is it stays well away from Iran. It doesn't need the Strait of Hormuz. It doesn't need the goodwill of the Ayatollahs. Iran simply disappears from the map, becomes irrelevant. And the second, which is even bigger, this route is the West's answer to China's new Silk Road. So pay attention to what Fars is really asking for. When they ask to hit Haifa and Dubai, they're not asking for revenge. It's not Dubai, guys. It's the port there in Dubai, okay? They asked to hit the port, not the city of Dubai. They're not asking for revenge here. They're asking for the end of the project. They're saying very clearly, if world trade goes on without us and without China, then that trade won't exist. And that's why I keep insisting on this. For some time now on this channel, for some time there have been several videos, and those who have followed me for much longer know this, something that has now become very clear. This was never just about uranium, about ballistic missiles, it's about who controls the world's routes. And this is where I want you to pay close attention, because this isn't something I'm figuring out today, folks. I've been saying this on this channel for a long time for those who've been following me for a while, something that seemed like an exaggeration to some back then and now has become obvious. This war was never just Israel against Iran. Deep down, it has always been the United States against China. And Iran is the pawn on Beijing's chessboard, and Israel is the pawn on the United States chessboard. That's the truth. The American proxy and the Chinese proxy. Iran is losing this war. That's already clear to everyone. But I'll make one important thing clear here. Losing the war doesn't mean Iran has lost completely, because as long as the regime is still there, we've lost this war. The regime needs to fall for all of this to start working. But Iran isn't losing alone, okay? It's not losing alone because behind it there's a giant that's losing too, and that giant is China. Every kilometer of this new route that gets built is a piece of China's Silk Road coming down. Now look at the final score and see how everyone on the right side wins. Israel wins twice. It wins because the Shiite axis that surrounds Israel, or at least used to surround part of its borders, is being dismantled, piece by piece, and it wins because the enemy's bomb is also being diffused. The Americans win because they break China's commercial dominance without having to fire a single shot at Beijing, and the whole world wins because a new route emerges, right? A new route, cheaper, faster, and that doesn't depend on any Ayatollah's goodwill. In other words, 3 victories at once, and that's why they're desperate. And let me give you a detail about the port of Haifa that wraps up this story perfectly, which you don't know. I'm sure you don't know this. The port of Haifa is in itself a miniature dispute between India and China. Look how crazy that is. Because the old port was bought by the Indian group Adani in 2023 for more than $1 billion. And according to some information, this Adani group is connected to the President of India. Okay? There are family ties with the current President of India. It was bought by them for more than $1 billion, and the new terminal of this same port, right next to it in the same bay, is operated by a Chinese state-owned company. A Chinese state-owned company. In other words, within the same waters in Israel, India and China are face to face. And now it's clear why Haifa became a target, isn't it? It's not just any port, it's the port where the western route meets the Mediterranean. Whoever controls Haifa controls the port, the gateway to Europe. And for Iran and China, this gateway needs to stay closed. And how did Israel respond to this threat? The defense minister Israel Katz said the following. He said that the Israeli army is ready and alert, both to attack and to defend itself, and ready to return to confrontation with Iran a third time if necessary, and with even greater force. And here is the difference between the two sides, and it fits in a single sentence. Iran called, through a news agency, for someone to hit Haifa, and that someone is the Revolutionary Guard itself. Israel responds that it is already ready and waiting for this to happen. One side writes an editorial, and the other side loads the plane. Now, my friends, I'll keep the promise I made at the start of this video. While everyone argues over the route, and that is the real fight, something is happening behind the scenes, in the dark, underground, and it is the most serious of all. I already shared some of this information in a previous live stream about a week ago, right? But now there is new information. The American network CNN, together with a specialized institute, published new satellite images. And they show Iran rebuilding the places that were hit during the war. in Parchim, a military complex where it is believed there is material related to atomic weapons testing. The images show excavation around the craters left by the bombs, concrete being reinforced, rebar being assembled for a new cover over the site, and the institute was clear. There is significant activity indicating Iran's commitment to repairing and restoring the site, but it's not just Parchim where this is happening, folks. The worst is the place I promised you. And the name of this place is Pickaxe Mountain, folks. That's really the name of the place. That's the translation. Monte Picareta is an underground complex dug deep inside the mountains. And look at this detail, folks. No inspector has ever entered there. No inspector from the International Atomic Energy Agency has ever set foot in that place. No one in the free world knows what exists inside there, and that's what worries the experts and intelligence agencies. It's just that it was dug so deep that not even American bunker-busting bombs, those bombs that penetrate bunkers, can reach this place. In other words, it's a place that no one can see and maybe no one can reach. And the new images showed vehicles going in and out of the tunnels in that mountain. Now, focus on the most serious detail. This was happening while the agreement or the memorandum of understanding with the Americans was still in effect. In other words, they shook hands with the West with one hand and dug into the mountain with the other. That's why I said from the start this negotiation might not be worth the paper it's written on. And Trump also said that the negotiations, a negociação, will continue, but the ceasefire is over. He said that too yesterday, guys. The ceasefire is over, but we're going to keep talking. In other words, we're going to negotiate under fire during a war. That's how negotiations will work from now on, according to Trump. So, how do you negotiate the enemy's disarmament like that, right? If he has a safe that you can't open, can't see, and maybe can't even break into. You're not negotiating, you're gambling. That's exactly what the United States was doing. I hope they stop doing that as soon as possible. And now notice something else which is also interesting because it says a lot about how this regime thinks about the three most talked about places in the international media, right? Fordo, Isfahan, these are the places everyone knows, but there's more. Fordo, Isfahan. Isfahan and Natanz, the three most well-known places, the ones that appear in newspapers all over the world, always. There hasn't been any reconstruction, nothing is happening there at the moment. The regime is not rebuilding the place, the whole world is watching. In other words, total silence there. They are rebuilding exactly the places that no one pays attention to and no one has ever been to. And to top it off, the spokesperson for the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs came out publicly to say that they will not allow any inspections at the affected sites. In other words, Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz, no inspectors, not even one. If any agreement happens in the future, they won't allow anyone to access those sites. He also said the following, that the UN resolution, which provided the legal basis for this inspection, is no longer valid. Translating that for you, now we do whatever we want and nobody comes in here to see. And there was also an incident this morning that really shows how this regime operates. Look at this. Residents of eastern Tehran heard loud explosions and according to reports, the window panes shook and it happened near the Parchim area. And what was the official explanation? The local governor said it was the controlled destruction of old ammunition left over from the war and that there was no danger at all. But the Iranian opposition said something else, claiming that the explosions happened at the entrances to the Parchim tunnels, in other words, to reopen that site. Guys, and I'm not going to confirm either version here because there's no independent confirmation, but have you seen this movie before? Every time something blows up inside Iran, there's always an innocent explanation, right? Gas leak, usually old ammunition, or a short circuit. That's too much of a coincidence, guys, to be true. It's just too much. And there was another diplomatic move in the last few hours. The Iranian foreign minister rushed to Oman at this very moment. He's in Oman now. You need to know that Oman has long served as a go-between for Americans and Iranians. That's where back-channel messages have been passing through for a long time. Trump spoke on the phone with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and according to the Saudi statement, the two talked specifically about protecting the routes. Look at that, folks, the routes again. Notice that even the conversation between Trump and the Saudis is about routes, always about routes. The Iranian foreign minister even accused the Americans of violating the agreement, not Iran. In other words, while the bomb is being rebuilt, they're in the dark where no one knows what's happening. Diplomacy keeps moving forward in the light. Everyone pretending that there's still something that can be fixed, right? The end of all this, folks, is just another war. If you want to understand this whole conflict, don't just look at the uranium, look at the map of the routes. Today, Iran received a demand to publicly admit that it has lost control of its own water. That's the American demand. Are the Americans going to get that statement? Of course not, right, guys? Trump said he had 1,000 missiles aimed at Iran. And he even ended the message with praise be to Allah, speaking directly to the people over the heads of the regime, with the regime cornered. He chose to respond by targeting something that is not military, it's commercial, it's a port, it's a route. Because they understood something that many still haven't. They're not afraid of losing a battle, they're afraid of becoming irrelevant. A world where goods leave China, cross the Arab world, pass through Israel, and arrive in Europe. It's a world where no one needs to ask the Ayatollahs for permission for anything. A world where Iran has nothing left to sell, neither oil nor fear. And that's why they want the port of Haifa destroyed. Do you remember how many times they fired at the port of Haifa during this war? Just to remind you. Here, check the last 40 days of war, the number of alarms that went off just there in the north, in the region of the port of Haifa. Just Haifa, there were a lot, guys, so this didn't start today. Okay, this didn't start today. It's not just hatred toward the port of Haifa, it's fear of the future, as they'll become irrelevant. The irony is that this entire corridor exists only because of one thing, because of something they swore to prevent, the peace between Israel and the Arab world. They swore to prevent it, right? But it happened. The United Arab Emirates and Bahrain are countries that signed the Abraham Accords. In other words, what they're trying to hit with the missile is actually the result of a handshake. So remember this phrase because it sums up the entire Middle East. So what should we watch for from now on? I'll leave you with 3 key points to watch in the next few hours, okay? In the next few hours, everything can change once again here in the region. The first is the American demand. If the regime makes this statement, which I don't think will happen, this public statement about the Strait of Hormuz would be a public surrender. If they do nothing, the American hand will strike again. Speaking of which, let's look at the planes still in the Gulf region, right? There isn't any escort at the moment, but they're still here. The second is Haifa. If Iran stops with the statements and moves to missiles, in other words, if the next response to an American attack is a strike on the port of Haifa, Israel will probably enter this war. Heavy stuff, guys, really heavy. And the third is Mount Picareta. As long as no one goes into that tunnel, into that place, to see what's inside, the whole world is negotiating in the dark. That's why I always say, guys, the best solution to this war is the fall of the regime. By overthrowing the regime, all these places become irrelevant. Bombing isn't necessary if a new government ends the regime, right? It ends. Everything ends along with it. All the funding, the organization of terrorists, everything, guys, ends together with the regime. It's better than dropping bombs. So it's better to aim at the leaders and finish the job once and for all instead of just dropping bombs. On buildings, on bases, on places they know how to rebuild very quickly. That's it, guys. You have to destroy the leadership while this isn't over. I'll be here putting the pieces together for you every day. So if this video helped you see the whole picture, subscribe, turn on notifications, share this, and send it to your family and work groups. Mainstream media doesn't connect the dots like this. Let's quickly go to the comments. Israel's tactical atomic bombs could be used to contaminate the entrance areas in the mountains with radiation. If there's suspicion that an atomic bomb was built there, it could contaminate, but we have all kinds of countermeasure systems inside, right? Steel doors that are closed in phases precisely to absorb the impact of bombs. I think the best solution, honestly, is to blow it up and end the regime. That's the best solution. Where's Logan? Logan, where are you? Do you think it's to make it for a bomb? Hey Logan, how's it going in Iran? Everything okay? Humanity isn't lucid enough to know what Armageddon could be if Iran can't produce an atomic bomb. Thank you for the super sticker, Aguinaldo. That's it for this live stream for now, my friends. If anything major happens in the Middle East, I'll be back right away. It seems like something could happen today, right? That's the American promise. No deadline was given, but it appears everything concludes today. If Iran doesn't declare this, something could start today, tonight. Once again, it's not that a big war will start in that region, but rather what we've already seen in the last few days, right? Let's meet again tonight with more information. I have more news for you. There's a cruise. Did you hear about this cruise, guys? I'll bring more information about the cruise later. An LGBT cruise that left from Europe, from some country in Europe, okay? And it was supposed to dock in Turkey. The Turks denied this LGBT cruise permission to dock there. They said, you won't set foot here, you're not coming here at all. And from there, they went to Alexandria. in Egypt. When they got close to Alexandria, Egypt said, "You're not going to stop here either, right?" This probably won't make the news anywhere, but I'm going to bring you a video on this exact topic, point by point. Who are these people, so you can understand that these same guys who protest in Europe in favor of these Muslims, look what happens to them when they try to dock in those Muslims' countries. They could very well send these guys actually to Gaza, right, guys? To dock there at the port of Gaza, don't you think? That would be perfect. All good, Davey? People are anxious, sending mags and ammo. It's probably already on its way, Logan. And we'll sort this out easily. My friends, hugs to everyone and see you on the next live stream.